Stangibelisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1GV, Whiskey 1, Good Vibrations. Remember, if you're old enough, you will remember, all the way back in the 1960s, even the 1950s, shortwave radio receivers were a little bigger than they are nowadays. I am referring particularly to receivers that I always found fascinating, although I never actually owned one. They were manufactured by a company called Hammarlund. That sounds Swedish to me, but they were really large, really big things. I mean, I don't know what to use for size comparison nowadays. They weren't as big as a portable refrigerator, maybe a microwave oven, a little bigger than a typical microwave oven. But they had umpty-nine different knobs on them and tuning dials and meters and all kinds of things. They looked like you'd have to spend a year just learning how to operate the thing. You wouldn't have to program it, but it was just they were also well known as among the best shortwave radio receivers in existence. Vacuum tube based, of course, probably weighed anywhere from 40 to 70 or 80 pounds. Great big things, might make a good companion for a Johnson Viking Valiant transmitter for a ham radio station. Together, the two things would take up a whole tabletop. Maybe you'd have a tube-type electronic keyer, or even a manual straight key, or a vibroplex, one of those semi-automatic keys. Some sort of, it'd have to be a key, it'd have to be CW. Forget about voice. CW would be the mode I would use, but I never owned a Hammarlund receiver. And if any of you ever did, you know it. I think I'll leave comments open in case anybody out there happens to remember those things and maybe even owned equipment like the Johnson Viking Valiant, things like that. Even the Collins 75A4 and KWM2. They can make more sophisticated receivers nowadays in transceivers such as the Yaesu FT857D Delta, that you could open the lid of an old Hammarlund radio and put one of those FT857Ds inside it and close the lid and have plenty of room to spare. You'd probably maybe even keep your soup warm in one of those things, as long as you didn't spill the soup. Or keep maybe your hot cross buns warm or something like that inside one of those big old Hammarlund receivers. I'm just reminiscing the olden days, the 1960s. I'm 65 years old now, going to turn 66 in September. Born in 1953, so I would have been in my early teens when those receivers predominated or prevailed in the market. And so any of you guys, gals, old enough to remember those things? How'd you like them? Did any of you own one? Stangibelisco, W1GV, saying 73, and so long, which then as now, in my native fist, would translate to da-da-da-da-da-da.